Salutations Rangers, General Bradley 101 back at you again with some more lore. But before we can do in with that, a little bit of housekeeping. So, two things. First up, I got sick. How? I ended up mildly rupturing my throat. Don't be alarmed, that's just the technical term. How? I sneezed. Now, you might be looking at me saying, Brad, what in God's good green earth do you mean you sneezed? Well, my sneeze has less in common with a tiny cat and far more with a 12 gauge inside of a metal box. I sneezed quite loudly, and this time it hurt my throat. So yeah, it got inflamed, and then it was pretty bad, but I'm feeling a little better now. Well, at least I can talk now. So yeah, that kind of sucks. But I'm still on some heavy medication, and I also got hacked. Yes, my Discord account is no longer in my possession. Thankfully, everything else is perfectly intact, so, thank God for that. But if you receive a message from the old Discord account, do not reply to it, just block it. It's probably going to ask you for money or click a link. Don't do any of that, just ignore it. I have a new account up. I'll put a post on it when it's ready and when I have time. So yeah, just please stay safe out there, guys. Don't click on any links and never give out your password for any reason. Because remember, Discord already has your password, so they won't need it. The only person who will need it is the person who doesn't have it. So keep that in mind. Also, probably don't be on about 500 milligrams worth of high strength anti-inflammatory pain meds. Coming from a friend. That friend is me. I was on those meds and I was kind of cooked yesterday. But that's enough of that. But if you guys want to help me out, you can always give me... Oh, that was God punishing me for my sins. By the way, that whole money thing was a joke. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. And yeah, my God, this video is going to be cooked. But anyway, we will endeavor to continue. So, ladies and gentlemen, in today's video, we are starting our first ever episode of a brand new series called TableTop Compliant. In the wonderful world of Warhammer 40k, there are many different ways to enjoy the hobby, be it painting, playing, reading, or simply kicking your feet up and watching as various different flavors of nerd fight each other over which imaginary spaceman army is in fact the best. Or, as many people do, you could simply relax and watch me do it for you online, as well as with all my other boys. But more often than not, people rarely bridge the gap between lore and tabletop, because tabletop needs to be fun and balanced, and lore in Warhammer 40k is anything but fun and balanced. But what if you had a very handsome nerd with a wonderful mustache who has absolutely no time in his life but decides, you know what, I don't need sleep, let me see if I can put lore and tabletop together. And so, I did. In TableTop Compliant, we'll be picking a model from the tabletop. We'll cover its in-universe lore. We'll then cover its modeling capabilities, how well does it paint, how well does it build. We'll then talk about its cost, how easy you can purchase it, and then its overall strength in-game and how to use it in an army. Rounding it up fully by giving it a final ranking score based on its overall value as a tabletop mini. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to TableTop Compliant, the one-stop shop to make sure that your tabletop minis are indeed Codex compliant. But without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's get started with our first ever model, and of course we're doing the Space Marines, cause duh, and we'll be starting off with the Primaris Intercessor. So let's learn about these boys, shall we? To say that the advent of the Primaris came with a little bit of a pushback is like saying that the sun is kinda bright. Many of the old guard were not a fan of the introduction of the Primaris, and many still are not a fan of them. Why? Two reasons. One, the first is that many of them saw them as replacing the old Firstborns, which had been the cornerstone of GW for the better part of 30 odd years, give or take, for 40 nearly in this case now. Which, yeah, they are. As we take a look throughout this, you notice that a lot of Firstborn units are pretty much gutted, and they don't really get any more updates, either in models, sculpts, or rules. And slowly but surely they are getting phased out. I mean, we already lost the box knot. Rest in peace, venerable brother. Your duty has finally come to an end. Big Sag. F in chat for the box knot. The second reason is that it represented innovation, and a big draw of a lot of people in Warhammer 40k is that it's stagnant, it's regressive, it's grimdark. And innovation represents hope, hope represents something that is not grimdark, and therefore, you see how it goes. I, for one, do not like the fact that Warhammer 40k is regressive. I like the fact that, there is some hope that we are slowly moving forward, but some people it's not their cup of tea, so it's more of a personal taste. But now, let's take a look at the lore in of itself. The Primaris project was ordained and sanctioned by Lord Commander Robute Gilliman in the years of the Scouring, that being the several decades in which the remaining forces loyal to the War Master then began their retreat into the Eye of Terror, and were pursued relentlessly by the Imperial host, and they would continue and scour all worlds that were not loyal to the Emperor, hence the term, the Scouring. So Baba G came up, and he talked all to Mr. Cole, He was like, hey, we need to upgrade our Space Marines. And Carl was like, sure can do. But before Bobby G could give his big ol' announcement of the project and put his Ultramar stamp of approval on it, he got stabbed by a sexy sneaky snake. And then he was put in a 10,000-year coma. Carl, though, continued on with his work and kept on building boys and technology up in the back. Eventually, though, when Bobby G would return, he would call upon Carl and activate the Primaris project. Carl would then unleash the Primaris Marines, and the total amount of the Primaris Marines was said to be 9 legions strong. And when you consider that the average legion was about 100,000 Marines, that's basically under 1 million Marines. Now, you know, whenever it comes with GW and numbers, take it with a grain of salt, but still, it makes sense, because that's a lot of boys. But from there, Carl would unleash the Primaris using his own personal bark, the Zar Questores. In addition, every single host would be accompanied by a detachment of the Adeptus Custodes shield host, known as the Emissaries Imperator. They would go to every single Space Marine chapter and deliver them the new Primaris and the means to make them. So whilst they may be sus about new Space Marines, which is very heretical mind you, if one of Big E's big golden banana boys came in and told you, hey, stop being dumb, this is a gift from the Emperor, most people are going to be okay with it. Unless you're that one Black Templar Crusade who murdered everybody. No idea what happened to them. Hope they died though. From there, the various Grey Shields, which was the collective name for all Primaris Marines which were not assigned to a given chapter yet, would then launch on the Indomitus Crusade with Guilliman, and begin reclaiming most of the Imperium. At the end of Sen Crusade and the beginning of the Plague Wars, the 20,000 remaining Grey Shields would then be turned into their own Primaris chapters, with every other existing chapter being reinforced and many old chapters being resurrected, such as the Soul Drinkers and Astral Knights. From there, the Primaris Marines would continue, as they became the new standard for the Space Marine, and seemingly, they had fixed all the faults previously beheld. They no longer had any genetic flaws or mutations and were seemingly immune from chaos. And that is where we get to the issue of why people were so upset. They saw the Primaris Marines as being too clean, but more specifically too ultramarine. A big concern for a lot of Warhammer 40k fans was that their beautiful legions of Space Wolves, Blood Angels, Salamanders, Dark Angels, Iron Hands, all these very unique Legion identities were going to be subsumed into just Ultramarine version 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, etc. GW recognized this and they backtrack a little bit on the lore. Eventually we realized that Primaris Marines are indeed susceptible to genetic defects. The Blood Angels still get their Red Thirst, the Space Wolves still get their Werewolves, and the Iron Hands are still depressed. As in regards to them falling to chaos, well, we don't really know exactly. There are some hints, but to my knowledge, there has been no directly confirmed encounter. But given everything, I'd say it's pretty possible. I mean, they should be able to fall to chaos, I don't see a reason why for them not to. Speaking about their abilities, what makes them so different? Well, they're taller. They're usually about a foot taller than most average Space Marines, and they match about the height of the Thunder Warrior. In fact, some people argue that the new Primaris Marines are the Thunder Warriors, but re-engineered and stabilized. I don't know how much water that theory holds. It's a cool idea. Personally, it doesn't really vibe with me that much. In addition to this, they also have faster reflexes, better eyesight, better everything, they're stronger. They're essentially Space Marine Plus. But a bit more tangible differences is that they have 3 unique organs. You see, normally a Space Marine gets 19 gene seed implant organs. However, the Primaris get an additional 3. First, we have the sinew coils, aka the steel within. The muscular sinews of the Primaris are reinforced with metallic coils. So in the most literal sense, their muscles have metal in them. This dramatically increases their overall strength and durability, in addition to making their defense even more durable than it already was. The second one we have is the Magnificat, the amplifier. This is a small date-sized organ that is located inside the brain's cortex. And this gland secretes hormones that notably increases the body's growth functions, but also it works as an added boost for 2 of the other implants, that being the Vascopia and the Osmudla. But the really weird thing is, or cool thing I should say, is that this is only half of the dual Immortus gland, the Godmaker. This was a gland unique to the Primarchs. So this is essentially a mini version or half version of that. Problem is, Big Daddy Cole can only find the blueprints for half of this. The other half of the prints are probably in Biggie's head, which is more dust than brain at this point, so think less sloshy soup and more like powdery flour. But all in all, it helps the Space Marines get bigger and stronger. Nice. Now finally we have the Belisarian Furnace, the Revitalizer. This is essentially an adrenaline shot, the organ. It's a dormant organ that is connected directly to the Astartes' twin hearts. If the Space Marine, say for example, gets stabbed by a big Tyranid, this thing will pop off and give him enough adrenaline to wreck shop on anything. It's like giving a 5-year-old kid a 5-hour energy. Don't do that, please, for the love of God, you will kill the child. All in all, these 3 additions are pretty solid, and the one thing that everyone can agree on is that the addition of these organs are pretty sick. I've never seen anyone ever complain about them in any meaningful capacity ever. And while most people know about these organs, there are some things that people don't know about the Primaris, and that there are 3 different kinds. There are the Awoken, the Indoctrinated, and the Rubicon. The Awoken are Primaris Space Marines who served during the Heresy, either in actual frontline combat or neophytes. And before Gilman was interned, they voluntarily submitted themselves to become Primaris, and were then placed in stasis for over 10,000 years. There are several stories of some Primaris Marines actively fighting with Rogue Dawn and remembering them, and in some cases they are more veteran than even the most veteran of the first company of their respective chapter. Now these are an interesting case of blending the old with the new. These are Space Marines who grew up during the Great Crusade. They experienced and understood the pain of it all, but now they're thrust into the modern Warhammer 40k. So looking at them and how they adapt is a very interesting dichotomy. One of the things about it is that when you look at a Space Marine from the Great Crusade, they're significantly different from the Space Marines of 40k. They're far more human. So seeing how a far more human Space Marine would act in a far less humane time is a very interesting watch in my opinion. But from the oldest of the old to the youngest of the young, we have the Indoctrinated. These are new folks from the 34th millennium, all folks who were taken after the Heresy, and they were then transformed into Primaris Space Marines. These are the quintessential Primaris Marine, the new boy on the block who doesn't know left from right, and who just wants to do what is good for Big E, Papa Gilliman, and Daddy Call. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple, they're Primaris Marines. They're like regular Space Marines, but generally speaking, they're a bit more put together, both physically and mentally, most of the times anyway. And then finally we have the Rubicon Primarus. You see, if a normal firstborn Space Marine gets very close to death, and if they're not exactly worthy of interment to a Dreadnought, they have a choice to enter the Rubicon Primaris, essentially to undergo the Primaris surgery to make them a Primaris Marine. This is very deadly. I believe it has a 50% or 25% mortality rate. Regardless, it's not exactly a sure thing, but considering you're already on the verge of death, seems like a no-brainer, right? But those firstborns who undergo this end up becoming some of the strongest Primaris ever seen. Notable example being Mr. Papa Smith himself, Marinius motherfucking Calgar, baby. Cue the scene! I really hope that doesn't get copyrighted. If it does, I may have to remove the audio, but you guys will know in the video. And that's basically the whole rundown of the Primaris Marines and everything about them. And as for the specific Intercessor, the Intercessor is the baseline troop. It is essentially the Primaris version of the Tactical Squad. But don't tell an OG player that, because they will probably beat you with their shoe. OG people don't really like the whole Primaris thing. But they are armed with bolt rifles. The bolt rifle is an upgraded version of the bolt gun. It has better range, better punching power, but about the same damage. They are the general purpose infantry. They are meant to garrison buildings, they are meant to slowly advance up the field and take the objective, they're meant to strike hard, provide overwatch. They are Space Marines incarnate. At range, you're going to get hit with mass reactive rounds that are going to pulp you before you can even see it coming, and dare you even get up close, that big ol' honking combat knife, which is more in common with an arming sword mind you, is going to hit you square in the chin and promptly remove said chin, as well as your head, neck, and most of your intestines. Because Space Marine. All in all, in terms of the Intercessors, whether you like it or not, they are indeed an updated version of the Tactical Squad, minus of course the heavy weapons. But given how Primaris Marine seems to specialize in each type of weapons, it's kinda divvied out on its own. Now, whether or not you like them, that's up for debate. But personally, in terms of their lore, while it started out pretty rocky, and GW of course did that thing which I hate, which is, oh, there have always been Primaris Marines on Mars. It's like, yes, GW, there's always been everything anywhere. Because you can just pull anything out of your ass and expect us to believe it. But to be fair, over the years, the Primaris lore has gotten significantly better. And the way it stands now, with Intercessors being what they are, they're pretty unopposed, and they're quite nice. And depending how each Primaris Marine adopts their parent chapter's culture, whilst out the box, they do come out a little bit bland. If you're playing them as Salamanders, put some Dre skills on them. If you're doing Dark Angels, give them a tabard and a winged helm. Flavor them up your own way. So overall, in terms of the Primaris lore, as in the modern, up-to-date, basic lore, I personally would give it a solid 8 out of 10. You know, it's good lore. It's nothing too crazy, it's nothing too wild, but overall, it does what it needs to do. And if you take out any of the bias that, oh, Primaris and Firstborn, you get a solid 8 out of 10 in my opinion. But if you're a very diehard Firstborn fan, you would probably give it a 6 out of a 10. So if you want to be super unbiased, I guess you could say a solid 7 out of 10 is what you get. But for me personally, I'm going to go with 8 out of 10 because whilst I do like Primaris, I don't love everything about them. And I think that for Space Marine lore, it's pretty solid. But let me know what you guys think. But now that we covered lore, let's talk about the actual model in of itself. So, the actual Primaris Space Marine models. So buying these directly from GW, you're gonna get a box of 10 of these bad boys for approximately $62.50. It is a multi-part plastic kit and it contains the components to assemble all 10 of them, including a sergeant, though I do believe that the sergeant doesn't get access to any of its melee weapons. I know for a fact he doesn't get the Thunderhammer nor the Power Fist, but you do get the option to equip them in however you want. You can indeed equip them with a grenade launcher, as well as 3 different kinds of bolt rifles. Back in previous editions, those different bolt rifles had different stats, but now they're just for flavor. So for your $62 and some change, you come with a grand total of 266 components on 10 32mm bases, with an included transfer sheet. So all in all, looking at the minis, they look pretty nice. They are very much Space Marines, and they fit the bill quite well. But again, the major complaint to them is that they're a bit bland per se. And if you do look at them, they do look a little bit on the generic end. A big complaint that a lot of people have, the shins as well, they look a little bland. There's not really much on them, so people don't like that. They like a little bit extra here and there. And overall, in regards to the model itself, some people, it's just not their cup of tea. Again, it's too bland. Other people don't mind it being bland and they like it. But at the end of the day, it depends. Are you someone who wants a super custom detailed army? Well, then you're probably already going to have a giant bits box with your own pile of shame, and you can pick and choose and add your own customizations to them. But if you're a new guy getting into the hobby, well, you don't really care too much about customization, you just want to have minis to use. So all in all, in that regard, in terms of the Primaris model in of itself, how it looks, and the way it's used, I would give it a solid 8 out of 10 personally. But a bunch of my fellow content creator friends, and people who actually are very in-depth and professionals in the painting/building scheme of it, they're not too keen on it, but I think that's just their experienced style talking, and they give it more of a 7 or 6 out of 10. So all in all, I'm rounding this off to a solid 7.5 out of 10. If you're a newer person, these are going to be more appealing to you. If you're an older chap, these are going to look a little bland. But again, if you're an older chap, you can make them less bland. And if you're a newer chap, you can learn how to make them less bland along the way. So all in all, for the look of the model, final rating, 7.5 out of 10. Next up, we have ease of build/painting. How easy is it to put these little fellas together and give them a good paint job? Well, here the Intercessors score a little bit less. The most common complaint that I see is that most people end up leaving a gaft between the thigh as well as the butt. They're quite fiddly to put together, and then in some regards, painting them can be a little bit of an issue. Sometimes they don't exactly click together. Another issue that I've heard that people have is that connecting the knee pad to the shin guard as well can be a little finicky. Some people have had issues with mold lines, etc. So, generally speaking, again, if you're a newbie, you're not really going to notice these things, or you're not going to really care too much. But if you're someone who's been in the hobby, at least for a little bit, this is those little things that are going to drive you a bit insane. Also, painting some of those super small invasive details, like the purity seals, the belts, the grenades, all those little things that are like snug inside the model are kind of annoying. Also, another complaint that people have said is that the gun comes attached to the hand rather than to the wrist. So in the older models, you have to take the wrist off the mini itself and then place it on the hand. In this case, it comes directly placed on the hand, meaning that if you want to make a one-handed Primaris Marine with a bolt rifle, it kind of looks a little janky because you have to remove it and the fingers and all that. So it's, again, if you want to personalize and customize them, they're a bit of a pain in the ass, but if you just want to get them on the field, they're kind of okay. So overall, in this regard, I give ease of build a 6.5 out of 10. Next up, we have cost of purchase, i.e., how much money do you have to spend to get an actual working army on the tabletop? And here the Primaris Marines score pretty well. Overall, depending on where you get them from, whether it be GW directly or one of the various third-party stores, which usually give you a solid 10 to 20% discount, which I highly recommend, per your 10-man box of Intercessors, you can get anywhere from 2.5 to 3 points per dollar, which all in all, not that bad. Not that great, but could be worse. So overall, for cost of purchase, normally I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. But that's only because of its ease of purchase. Ease of purchase is how easy is it to get those models. Because as anyone who's been in 40k for a little bit of time knows, we have a big problem with scalpers. Luckily though, Intercessors don't have that problem. Intercessors were the first Primaris Marine, and have been included in pretty much every single main release in one way or another, in a different flavor or another. Therefore, finding them is hilariously easy. Just look on eBay or any secondhand sites. You can get them hilariously cheap. In some cases, fully built, primed, or painted as well. Any stage, really. You can even find bits and pieces of them randomly. These are, basically at this point, the most produced Space Marine mini, period. And they are super easy to find. So all in all, I gotta give them a 10 out of 10. They're everywhere. You can find them everywhere. So that's why the cost of purchase becomes an 8 out of 10, because if you want to build a solid 2,000 point army and you don't want to spend all of the money you've ever earned in your life, secondhand is the way to go. But that rounds up all of the hobby aspect of it, but now it's time for us to roll some dice. Alright, my voice is starting to go out, so I'll try and get this done quickly. But your standard Intercessor squad has a movement characteristic of 6 inches, toughness 4, 3 up save, 2 wounds, leadership of a 6 up, and a solid 2 OC. You can either take them in a 5-man squad of 80 or a big chunky 10-man squad with 160. Stock standard, every single one of them comes with a bolt rifle, bolt pistol, as well as a close combat weapon. The bolt rifle has assault and heavy. It is 24 inches, 2 attacks, 3 up ballistic skill, strength 4, AP -1, damage 1. And for every 5 models in a unit, you can take a grenade launcher, which is auto-include. You have a frag for anti-horde, and crack for a solid anti-armor threat. Strandland AP2 and D3 damage is going to hurt anything. That's potential to one-shot a Terminator if you get lucky. The Sergeant's bolt rifle can be replaced with a chainsword, hand flamer, or one of a plasma pistol or a power weapon. Though I would not suggest this, but we'll get to that in a bit. What I would suggest is replacing his close combat weapon with a power fist. Whilst the devastating wounds on the Thunder Hammer is nice, the -1 weapon skill is not that nice. Honestly, the devastating wounds doesn't make up for it. Just take the power fist. It is so much better. Of course, Intercessors are Space Marines, so thus they have the Oath of Moment faction ability, and of course they have objectives secured, meaning they have sticky objectives, which is always quite nice to have. But what really makes these guys shine is their special rule, that being target elimination. Each time this unit is selected to shoot, it can use his ability. If it does until the end of the phase, add 2 to the attack's characteristics of bolt rifles equipped by every model in this unit. And you can only select one enemy unit as a target of all this unit's attacks, i.e., fuck around and find out. This makes Intercessors hilariously scary. If you have a chunky 10-man blob of this, and all of them have bolt rifles, you go from 20 shots to 40. And with the heavy keyword, if they are stationary, you're hitting on 2s. Not to mention, if you give them a character, a lieutenant being my preferred choice, lethal hits means that they're going to be able to hit far above their weight. And when you have 40 shots, getting those 6s is not that big of an ask. Not to mention, he also allows you to fall back and charge. And considering if you give that sergeant that power fist, you're going to have a fair bit of melee bite. And assuming that the lieutenant also has a power fist as well. Now, assuming you have a big, chunky 10-man unit with bolt rifles and grenade launchers, if you're shooting at the standard infantry unit, that being 1 wound, 5 up save, a la Termagants, Guardsmen, etc., you are probably going to nail about 19 to 20 of them. Easily. And that's if you roll average. In terms of Space Marines, you can easily wipe out a 5-man Space Marine squad with this. Again, so long as you don't roll below average, it's pretty easy. You're going to at least get them to make a battle shock test. So if you're trying to contest an objective, so long as they don't have sticky, that's basically yours. Again, you can easily take out 2, maybe even 3 Terminators. If you get lucky with those grenade launchers, you can easily do it. Of course, if you're fighting anything like a vehicle, you'll plink off a few wounds, maybe, like 2, most. They're not exactly anti-vehicle. But if you fire these guys at anything that is not a Space Marine, they're basically going to wipe the unit. These guys are deadly. Not to mention, if you add in the Oath of Moment, which gives them a +1 to wound, suddenly the strength 4 in their bolters is not really that much of an issue. I'm just saying, wounding normal Space Marines on a 3 and hitting them on a 2 if you stay stationary with 40 shots. Nah, these things are wild. Not to mention, they're only 160 points for 10, and considering the lieutenant is 65, if you take 2 10-man bricks with 2 lieutenants, that is 450 points. That is less than a quarter of your army for 80 bolt rifle shots. All in all, looking at this and talking about this, I could go on and on. I haven't even mentioned the various codex attachments. Gladius works hilariously well. The Anvil Siege Force is basically what this was made for. Getting a +1 to wound if static is crazy. You don't have to rely on Oath of Moment just for that. That makes them even better. All in all, in terms of Intercessors, they are just fantastic. I am very tempted to give them an S, but I'm going to be reserved. And overall, in terms of their tabletop strength, I'm going to put them in a solid A tier. And how do you use them in an army? There are 2 ways to go about it. You can take 2 5-man squads to use them as battlefield objective holders. And the thing is though, you can't ignore them. If you have a 10-man guard squad that's trying to get you, 20 bolt shots are going to easily wipe the squad. If you have something a bit chunkier like Space Marines, whatever you don't kill in shooting, your sergeant with the power fist is going to make up for it in melee. They are a dangerous defensive unit. Or you could take them in a big 10-man blob with Lieutenant and make them as a terrifying offensive unit. All in all, it's great to see that standard Space Marines with bolt guns are scary again, as they always should be. But all in all, ladies and gentlemen, for the final overall ranking of the Space Marine Primaris Intercessors as a whole objective in terms of model as well as in-game strength, overall I gotta give them a solid A tier overall. Overall, they look great. Building them is a bit of a hit or miss, depends on how much effort you want to put into them, but you can get away with minimalistic. They are beyond easy to cheap and they're super easy to fill out an army. Not to mention, they're really good right now. All in all, as it stands, big metal man with big gun is very good, as it should be. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so very much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think about the new series, Tabletop Compliant. So I want to say a massive thank you to you all for watching, and a massive thank you to my members. Big shout out to my Lieutenant tier members, Mr. Eddie V3 and Miss Withdraw of the Void. Big shout out to my Sergeant tier members, Mr. Damiak, Mr. Andy McGee, Mr. Warsmith.Fireheart, Mr. RB20 Guy, and Mr. Corns Butcher. And shout out to my private tier members, Mr. Thomas Muslons, Mr. Ivan_SBW, and Mr. Michael Hayeda. And I said all your names from memory this time. I didn't even have to look at the member screen. I mean, it only took me like, what, 15 tries? I mean, hey, it's not that bad. And we are introducing a brand new tier. In this year, as I said, I wanted to make this my full-time vocation, and I think it's only right if I want to do that for me to actually put in the work. So we're going to try to put out a video every single day. You're going to get at least 5 a week, but more often than not, probably 6, sometimes 7. So yeah, I was delayed by getting sick, but you know, this is it coming from now. This is what it's going to be. So we're introducing a new tier, the Captain tier. And if you subscribe to this tier, you get a custom video idea. Whatever it is, could be about anything. It could be a tabletop model, could be a what do people get wrong about X, could be a faction overview. Whatever it is, you're going to get a solid 20 to 30 minute video on it as a very big thank you from me to you for supporting me during this time. But remember, you don't got to do this. It will always be free, and you just watching will be more than enough, and I will love you just the same. Mwah. Yes, I will. But ladies and gentlemen, I have been the General Bradley 101. I am sick as a dog right now. My voice is probably going to go out, but I'm feeling much better simply by doing this video. It feels so much better to actually be able to get back and do work rather than just sit in bed and wish I could work. So thank you guys for this. You guys have changed my world. I love you. I appreciate you. The love and support has been wild. You guys are bloody amazing. And I really hope you guys enjoy this new series. And I just want to say that tabletop rankings are based more specifically on the balance within the codex. It does apply to a little bit outside of the codex, but it's much more a whole condensed view as the unit within the faction, if that makes any sense. But I have been the General Bradley 101. You've been beautiful, awesome, and amazing people. Make sure to stay healthy out there, boys and gals, and don't sneeze too hard. And I will catch y'all next time. Dismiss, Rangers. Oh god, I have drank so much cough syrup in the past week. My god, man, I'm like 90% syrup. Call me a motherfucking pancake.